Again, I'd like to welcome you all to Ashford Park. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a lot of faces that I've seen in meetings of various Brookhaven civic associations, so thank you for coming. Without getting too long-winded, I'd like to just introduce very quickly CEO Burrell Ellis. Obviously, he's at the back end of his first year as the CEO and has been gracious enough to come out, tell us a little bit about what's going on in the county on a more personal level, and also give you an opportunity to ask some questions at the end. So with that, I'll turn it over to Burrell. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Will this come out? Can I just pull it? Okay. Everybody can hear me good. It feels kind of formal to stand behind this podium, so I'm going to come out here a little ways. First of all, Jim, thank you for the introduction, and thank you to the, it said Ashford Park Community Association, but I think it should say Civic Association. Is that right? That's what it says on here. So thank you to Ashford Park Civic Association. Thank you to all of you who came out tonight to be here. I want to correct one thing Jim said. I'm not at the end of my first year. I'm at the, actually, in my fourth year, the end of my first term. And so just want to let you all know, if it seems like I've been around longer than a year, it's because I have been. Representative Elena Parent is here. Thank you, Representative, for being here. Yes, let's give her an applause. Yeah. And are there any other elected officials here that I don't see? Many of our public servants, our public safety officials, and a number of the DeKalb County employees are here joining me tonight as well. Our Public Safety Director, William Miller, just walked in, and several others who I'll have an opportunity to introduce over the course of the evening. Let me tell you why we're here. First, I want to give you a quick overview of some of the progress we've been making and what I've actually been doing over the course of these previous 3 years as your CEO, what we've been working on, what we face, what we've addressed, and how far we've come. And we put together a stakeholders report. Looks like they're handing it out to everybody as they come in. But I'm going to ask you at your convenience to take a look at that stakeholders report. It's not only has some nice photos, but it has some really good, solid information of what we've been working on. We put that together for the citizens of DeKalb County so that you could see for yourself the kind of progress we've been making. It's been a tough time over the last 3 years. There's no question about that. The economy has been one of the worst economies that most of us, unless, and I don't see too many people here who look like they may have been here during the Great Depression. So unless you lived through the Great Depression, these are some of the worst economic times, and they've been sustaining, and the recovery is anticipated to be slow. And the county has been hit particularly hard. We've lost about $5 billion. I think, where's Joel? Where are you? Joel's not here yet, my CFO. But we've lost about $5 billion in revenue from our tax base, from the decline in the value of real estate. That's about 21% over the last 3 years. And I think anybody, by any measure, that's a significant hit. And so we've been working to restore the county's finances. And I'm going to give you all an overview, and then we're going to spend the bulk of the night taking questions. But when I came into office, the county in 2008, my last year as a county commissioner, and then I became CEO in January 2009, we were actually spending more money than we were bringing in. And we can't print money like the federal government, so primarily what we were doing is we were taking out of our budgetary reserve. And so, I mean, imagine that's our rainy day, that's our savings fund, our savings account. We can't continue to spend like that. And so we had to cut our spending back significantly. And all told, over these last 3 years, we've cut $130 million in our spending. And so those have been significant reductions. We've done it by reducing our staff, by reorganizing county government. We took people out of simply working in departments, and we put them into 4 areas: an administrative area, an infrastructure group, a public safety group, and what am I leaving out? Development. Okay. So I have some of my heads of those groups. Ted Reinhardt is here. He oversees infrastructure. I've got Kelvin Walton, who is over our administrative group. And I introduced previously Director Miller, who oversees our public safety group, and then development. We have them grouped together as well into one group. So we reorganized, we downsized, we eliminated some of the non-essential services. And believe me, that was probably the most difficult task, identifying in a government what is essential versus non-essential. We went to a strategic planning process over the course of about a year and a half, and we developed for the first time a strategic plan for the county. And one of the fundamental questions we ask our citizens is to tell us which services you deem as essential versus non-essential. And we very rarely got the citizens to tell us what they deem to be non-essential, but we got a lot of, we need more of this and we need more of that. There were times when I even went to determine for myself, after talking with my administration, about what was a non-essential service. And so we would identify it, we would either defund it or phase it out, and then the constituent group would rise and come to the commission meetings and say, we need the money back. So identifying non-essential services was difficult, but we were able to do that to some degree, and all told, get about $130 million out of the budget. But we still had a problem because of the decline in revenue, and so we also had to look for new sources of revenue. And so we put together a Revenue Enhancement Commission, and then, of course, last year we adjusted our millage rate. We had actually lost, first of all, we got downgraded by the rating agencies. And then our ratings were withdrawn. And we had to get busy and work hard and fast. But the good news is that after taking those steps, not only were we able to go to New York, I went to New York along with the commission's presiding officer, Larry Johnson, and our staff, and we met with the rating agency, Standard & Poor's and Moody's. We got our ratings restored. We then went to the market soon after getting our ratings restored, because we're in the process of restoring our water and sewer system in DeKalb County, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And so we had to sell almost $500 million worth of bonds. We were able to do that in near record time. In about 2 hours, we sold those bonds. We got a very attractive rates on the sale of those bonds, so that's good news for our taxpayers. And now our budgetary reserve, I tell you, we were taking money from that, had got dangerously low to about $9 million. Now, that ought to be at about 1 month's worth of operating expenses, or about $40 million for a county of our size with our size budget. But the good news is, because we took those aggressive and necessary actions, we now got our budgetary reserve almost back to where it needs to be. So we've got to continue on the pattern. We can't stop now and go back, but we've got to continue in the direction we're moving in, and we're making some significant progress. So that's good on the financial front. We've got good news to share, and if we continue to exercise the kind of discipline, same kind of discipline that you all are exercising at home with your finances, you're spending less, you're not doing those things which are non-essential. You know, maybe you're going to restaurants less often and going out to entertainment less often, but you still got to pay for rising costs. We've had to pay rising costs at home. That might be fuel and it might be groceries. In county government, it may be utility costs, and it may be pension costs and health care costs. So we still have to address those rising costs. But we're getting our fiscal house in order, and that's good news. The other thing I want you to know is that we're working very hard to improve public safety. Since becoming CEO, we've consolidated our public safety groups. We have our fire chief, whose name is, our police chief, let me start with him, Bill O'Brien, and our fire chief, Eddie O'Brien. You notice they have the same name and they kind of look alike, okay? Well, they're brothers. But neither one of them had responsibility for promoting the other. No nepotism in DeKalb County government. They both report to the Public Safety Director, Wiz Miller. And so we're working in a coordinated fashion along with our other public safety functions, working together, because before we had these disparate groups in the public safety, and one hand didn't know what the other hand was doing. And now we've got them working together as a team. We've got new management. We've restructured those departments. Over the last 3 years, I believe violent crime Chief, is down 37%, and property crimes are down 26%. And so that's good news, but we're not resting on our laurels. We know we have continued work to do in the public safety arena to continue to lower the crime rate. It's not good enough for me as CEO just to have lower crime. That's good. But I need our citizens to feel safe, because when you feel safe, you're willing to go out and do things and spend a little money and add to the tax revenue of the county and live as neighbors. And so we're continuing to work, but we've made great progress in public safety. And so I want to applaud those individuals, because they worked hard. After we looked at the management, they worked with me to put in new management and to restructure the systems in police and fire and our other public safety departments. And so that's good news. We're rebuilding our infrastructure. And I've introduced Ted Reinhardt, but under his leadership and people like Joe Basista, who's our Director of Watershed Management, and I don't know if Roy Wilson is here, our Parks Director, but we are working to improve our infrastructure in the county. A few years ago, you all approved a bond referendum in the county to build better parks, libraries, and our streets. And I want you to know that some of that money was just sitting in the accounts, and we've moved forward in an aggressive fashion. So in the last 3 years, we built 7 new libraries, or upgraded. We either built or improved 7 new libraries. We've got 1 more on the way coming this year. We've improved a number of our parks. We built 2 new rec centers. In a public-private partnership with the YMCA right now, we're building a new YMCA. We're building it, and they're going to operate it at a discounted rate to DeKalb County citizens. You may have seen an article about a soapbox derby track that we're working on for DeKalb County right now. I can assure you that's coming out of parks referendum money, not your general fund money, okay? So when you see the dollars, understand that that's money that can only be used for that purpose. So we're rebuilding our libraries, we're rebuilding our park system, and we have a number of major streetscape improvements along Buford Highway, Memorial Drive, Candler Road, just to name a few. This year, we're going to break ground on 2 new senior centers. How many police precincts? 2 police precincts this year. And what am I leaving out? Last year, we broke ground on a renewable energy facility where we're converting landfill gas into energy for vehicles. We're going to use that to fuel our 306 sanitation vehicles, and eventually we're going to sell that off. So eventually that's going to be creating revenue for the county government. We're working with our school system to support our schools, and that's another important thing that we're doing. We've got a new superintendent, Cheryl Atkinson. I have a higher education advisory council where we have all the university presidents sit around the table, and we've been working on a big issue that we could take on. And we've decided to take on public schools, and what we want to do is to come up with a program to support the public schools. So I've got the university presidents and the superintendent sitting around a table with me as we work to launch a program to support our school system and to undergird the system. These university presidents, and I'm talking everybody from Emory University to Agnes Scott to Oglethorpe, DeVry, Georgia Perimeter College, Georgia Piedmont Technical College, all of those institutions, Morehouse College, all of those institutions are seated around a table because we understand that we need to undergird our public school system. Those are the ones that feed people into the colleges and universities, and we can't have a vibrant DeKalb County if we don't have a vibrant school system. So while the county government doesn't run the school system, the county government has an investment. We also support the STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math. In the summertime, through our Office of One DeKalb, which Betty Davis is here, which she oversees, we run a program with the school system in the summer. They give us the facility, and we provide the learning opportunities. In fact, one year, the students actually created their own county government. They elected a CEO and county commissioners, and they put together a structure for meeting the needs of other students. And so they're doing some very exciting things through that program. Moving forward, you see a sign here that says One DeKalb Works. We're going to be rebuilding, upgrading our water and sewer infrastructure. We've got almost $1.4 billion of upgrades that have to be completed over the next 8.5 years. We've got to do it now to ensure before there are major problems, because we have an aging system. Most of our pipes are over 25 years old, and some are over 50, okay? Anybody here over 50? I'll just raise my hand. The rest of y'all don't have to, okay? So pipes break down when you get over 50, all right? And we've got to, some of y'all know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. And so we've got to ensure that we have clean drinking water, that we can continue to, toilets and faucets have to operate. These are basic human necessities. And in order to ensure that that happens before there's a problem that's going to impact our quality of life, we're going through a major upgrade of our water and sewer system. The citizens are going to be paying for that, obviously. The Board of Commissioners approved a capital improvement program, which we recommended to them, which includes higher water and sewer rates, which are already in effect. But the silver lining to that is that we're targeting the DeKalb County citizens to do the work. Now, we'll be hiring outside firms to do the work through our contract and our procurement program, which Kelvin Walton oversees, and that means we'll be putting it out to bid. But we're putting requirements in that require the people, in order to get those contracts, to include local small businesses and to have a plan to hire DeKalb County citizens. And so they'll be working very closely with our Department of Workforce Development. Cheryl Chapman is the director of that department. Cheryl, wave so everybody can know who you are. And they are working with other entities like Georgia Piedmont Technical College, Goodwill Industries, Urban League, to train those citizens. And we are already put together a, what do you call it? I call it the pipeline, but what do you call it? A database. A database of DeKalb County citizens who are trained and ready to go to work so that we can get our citizens employed. We know we have an employment problem, and we know that we can address it through this infrastructure program. And so this is our job stimulus program, and we call it One DeKalb Works. We have another program called One DeKalb Lives, where we're providing foreclosed homes because we've been impacted by foreclosures. We're the third largest county behind Fulton and Gwinnett in terms of number of foreclosures in the state. And so what we're doing is we're targeting foreclosed homes in quality neighborhoods, and then we're making them available to teachers, another way that we're partnering with our school system, and police officers and firefighters and other first responders. So what we're doing is we're moving community heroes into our neighborhoods, and that's a good thing. And so we're very excited. We call that our One DeKalb Lives program. And so we have a number of initiatives, some of the infrastructure initiatives, our job stimulus program, our works program. We're going to be working very closely with our Board of Elections to get people registered to vote. And particularly, you may have seen it on the news today, and we'll be making an announcement later in the week, that we're going to be really pushing, helping people who have disabilities and seniors get out to the polls and vote early. We've got to go to the polls several times this year. There's a presidential primary in March. And in addition to the presidential primary, you'll have an opportunity to vote on whether we should have alcohol sales on Sundays in unincorporated DeKalb. The cities have already voted in DeKalb County. We'll have a big election in July, local elections, CEO's race, county commissioners' races. Half of the Board of Commissioners will be up. But an important transportation referendum, which I hope to get an opportunity to talk about before we leave here today. I'll make sure I do that. And so remind me before I leave, Betty, if you will. Okay, so an important transportation referendum will be on the July ballot this year. And then in November, of course, is the general election where we go back to vote on the president. And so some big elections this year, and we're going to make sure that there's voter awareness and that we work to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to vote through early voting, and that our seniors and those with disabilities have an opportunity to get out and get to the polls as well. And so that's some of the good news. That's an overview of what we've done and where we're coming from. And if it's okay, I'm going to take my jacket off. I'm going to roll up my sleeves, and I'm going to hear from you. and I'm going to do my best to answer your questions. I always tell people this. Number one, I'll be as honest and as straightforward with you as I can possibly be. If I have an opinion with you about an inquiry that you raise, I'll give you my opinion. If I don't, I'll just tell you, I don't. And if I know the answer, I'll give it to you. If I don't know the answer, I got a group of people here who may know it, and if we don't know it, we'll take down your name and your information, and we'll get it back to you as soon as possible. Let me say that if you ask a very narrow question, like when is that pothole at 3216 Magnolia Drive going to be repaired, I'm probably not going to know the answer to that kind of a question, but we will get you the answer, okay? And we've got sufficient people here who can help with that as well. So let me open it up. And how are we going to do this tonight? Do people have to go to the mic? So can we move it around? And I'll even give you my mic if you need it. So who wants to go first? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Hans von Schirschke. I lived 43 years in the DeKalb County in the same house. And last year, I got a shell shock with a 23% increase on our taxes. And I just thought, I'd be dumbfolded, you know. Now, what you have in store for us this year, another 23%, or you're a little bit more lenient? Then I'm retired, and I cannot print on money either, you know, but that is outrageous at 23%. I think in business, you have to trim more, you get it down. But you cannot spend money you don't have. And I think that the DeKalb County or any government should do the same thing.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And first of all, let me say I appreciate that. I started out tonight talking about how tough the economy's been on all of us and how difficult it's been. I ran for this job and got elected, and I espoused a fundamental philosophy that I have. And that's that as a government, we should tighten our belt before we ask for more from our citizens. And the first thing I did when I became CEO, one of the first things I did, actually, let me back up, is I met with a colleague, and that was Shirley Franklin, who was at that time mayor of Atlanta. And I sat down with her, and she said, there's something waiting for you on your desk. And what she said is, you know, what are your priorities, Mr. CEO-elect? And I started telling her what my priorities were. And she said, there's something waiting for you on your desk that is going to, you know, shift those priorities. And you don't know what it is yet. And she was right. Because what I found out was when I looked at the county's finances after becoming CEO, is that we had a cash flow problem, a really cash flow problem. And we were beginning, the county had always enjoyed very high bond ratings. That means when we go out and sell our debt, that's our credit rating, that, excuse me, we get a good return on our dollar. We get good interest rates. And we were beginning to get these warnings from the agencies that we were in trouble because we had a real cash flow problem because we were dipping into our reserves and spending more than we were bringing in. And so the first thing I said is that we got to roll back our spending. And I think that first year we cut about $58 million. The second year we got it up to about somewhere, somebody will have to verify these numbers, but Joel's here. So Joel, as I recall, that first year we cut about $58 million. The second year I think we got it up to $87 million. By my third year in office, we had it over 100, and eventually we got it up to $130 million. I mean, that's in excess of, I think we're somewhere around 24%. We had a $636 million operating budget my last year as a commissioner before I became CEO, and we're at 547 now. Now, I know that's not a $130 million difference, but that's about a $100 million difference. So we had a spending problem, but we also had a revenue problem. So the second thing I decided is that let's identify non-cash sources of revenue. And so I went after the best brain power. I got a group of CEOs, for example, Kevin Greiner, who's the CEO of Gas South, and Bill Dahlberg, who used to be the CEO of the Southern Companies, and Matthew Ware, who's a CPA. I got some of the best business minds, and one of the commissioners, Kathy Gannon, and I put together a revenue enhancement commission, and they actually came up with some good ideas about how we should assess better for fees and licensing, and so we put those before the board, and we're able to raise some revenue from non-tax sources, but we still had a cash flow problem. And so we had to raise taxes. Now, let me put this in perspective. Virtually every jurisdiction in Metro Atlanta has done what DeKalb County has done. We were the last to do it. One of the things I said, and they put me on the truth-o-meter for saying this, is that we've cut more in spending than any other government in local Atlanta. Now, what I actually said was, I believe we have. So that made it a true statement as far as I was concerned. But they put me on the truth-o-meter anyway, and they found that it was absolutely true. So we did cut more than anybody else before we proposed to raise taxes. But with a 21% decline, $5 billion is the number I gave earlier, decline in our revenue from property values in the county, we had a real revenue problem. And the citizens don't tell me, here's what I hear more and more, I want services. Even now, I want services. So, so I want you to know that Gwinnett County has raised taxes, I believe, more than we have. Cobb County has raised taxes. Clayton County has raised taxes. City of Atlanta has raised taxes. I'm not sure about Fulton, but most of the cities within Fulton, Fulton's 90% incorporated, have done the same thing. And many of the cities, excuse me, have done the same. But not just governments. Every time I go to pump gas, they keep raising their prices on me too. Every time I go to buy groceries, they keep raising their prices on me too. So the argument that we should be making to you know, I buy my gas at QT, to QT and the Kroger and the Publix, you know, I don't stop buying groceries because they raise prices. But they raise their prices. And I don't stop buying gas because they raise their prices. I don't like it, but the cost of delivering services have gone up. So understand that when we raised taxes, we didn't get any additional money by raising the taxes. Because of the decline in revenue in the county, we actually raised taxes to stay at a neutral point with where we were the previous year. Is that the previous year? With where we were the previous year. And last year, as I recall, we had about $30 million in rising costs. By the time you added in our pension and our health care and a few other things. This year, we've got about another $7 million in rising costs, primarily because it's an election year, and we got to pay for all those elections I went over. So nobody, I want to be popular, obviously. I'm an elected official. I have an interest in having you like me and like what I do. An elected official who not only ran for office, but who's going to be running again, okay? So let me just say to you, but I take my responsibility very seriously. And understanding how difficult this economy has been on all of us, and my family is not immune to that as well, okay? But understanding how difficult it's been, I also have to do what's fiscally responsible and in the best interest of the county. And so the decision we ultimately made was to take a balanced approach of cutting deeply first, and then because revenues continue to decline, we then raised taxes. But understanding what that did, I was then able to take that financial plan up to New York and look at Moody's and S&P in the face. And then Joel, we had dozens of conversations with them preceding our visit to New York, and then after we came back from New York. I mean, Joel could tell you better than I can the number of financial reports we had to prepare for these guys in order to get our ratings restored so that we could get the best return on the dollar when we went to the market. So I understand. Now, let me answer the part about this year. I have proposed a budget to the Board of Commissioners this year with no additional tax increase, okay? And so that's the good news I can deliver to you at this time. Nobody knows how long this recession is going to last. No, and real estate is continuing to be, any real estate, people in real estate here? Okay, so you know real estate is continuing to be impacted. None of us like it. I don't like seeing my property values decline. and no one can tell us exactly when we're going to bottom out, and then begin on the rise. But I pray that it happens sooner rather than later. Okay, so thank you for your question. I know that was a long answer, but it's a difficult question. The economy, I got to say this, the economy is complex. And if there was a simple, easy answer, number one, anybody could do it. And all these economists that you hear debating on TV all the time wouldn't be disagreeing. It would be fixed if there was if there was a magic bullet, and there's just not. So it's probably the most difficult thing I've faced as an elected official. I've got a background in finance and law. I take it very seriously, and I treat your dollars like they're my very own, because, in fact, they are. So that I want you to know. So thank you very much for that question. Yes, anybody over here? Oh, yes, sir. Yes.
First of all, thank you for coming to Ashford Park. We always like to have you up in,
Thanks for having
this
me
neck
here.
of the woods. You know, my name is Tom Hogan. I serve on Chamblee City Council,
Yes,
as you
Councilman,
know.
I knew you.
Yeah, that's
Good
right,
to see
that's
you.
right. We spent a lot of time together downtown today.
We did.
The thing that I've come tonight to hear you talk about, and I hope that you'll talk about it, is I've heard about the One DeKalb Works. I'm a huge fan of economic development. I'm a huge fan of the government being able, especially the county government, being able to play a particular role in being able to provide some economic stimulus or programming. But, you know, I'm also a very prudent, realistic, and conservative-minded, financially geared person. And I see a lot of like corporate-style economic development stuff spoken about, and it makes pretty pictures. And, you know, we pour hundreds of thousands of dollars into various efforts to try to create economic change in certain things. And I'm wondering, does One DeKalb Works have an entrepreneurial sort of endeavor? Is there a small business component to what you're doing? And if so, is there anything that you can talk about that's granular that we can see? And won't you open an office of One DeKalb up in our neck of the woods also?
Yeah. Thank you, Councilman. Great questions. First of all, is our jobs bus outside tonight? Okay. So I want to give you something. He asked, is there anything granular that you can see? Where is it parked, Cheryl? Okay. So I rushed in here. But out front, and how long is it going to be out there tonight? Okay, we'll keep it out here until you all don't want to see it anymore. But one of the things we created is a mobile career resource center. That's the official name, right? I call it the jobs bus. So, back when I was a kid, we had a bookmobile. And the bookmobile drove through neighborhoods, and then you could check out books. It was a library. It was a mobile library. Well, we have a mobile career center where you can go in and go on computers, and you can look for employment. Now, this is connected to the One DeKalb Works because I've talked about the training. One DeKalb works on the individual level with our citizens, training DeKalb County citizens to ultimately get the jobs that these private sector vendors who are going to get DeKalb County contracts in other words, they will hire these people because we have an ordinance that says you have to make a good faith effort. Now, how do we monitor whether they're making a good faith effort to go after DeKalb County citizens? Well, we monitor it because we have this database of citizens who are trained to do the kind of work that we're asking them to do. And we're going to have someone auditing it. So we've got an external auditor, and then we have a database that we're maintaining, and we have groups, organizations like Goodwill Industries and Georgia Piedmont Technical College who are actually going to train these citizens to do the work. So that gets right down on the people level. You asked about local small businesses. We have a local small business enterprise program. I authored the legislation when I was a county commissioner. And so what that means, if you're a DeKalb County-based business, you get a certain amount of extra points when you bid on a county contract. Or if you're a vendor who partners with a DeKalb County-based business or with a business within the metro area. So if you're a local business and small business, and then we have certain criteria with what defines small business. But if you meet those categories, then you can register as one of our LSBEs, our local small business enterprises, and then you can compete either on your own or with a general contractor to get county business, and then we give extra points for those people who compete for that to give them a better shot of getting the work. At the end of the day, because DeKalb citizens are paying for these water and sewer upgrades that are going to continue to enhance our quality of life, we think it's important that we keep the flow of the money in DeKalb County. So we're going to be hiring local businesses and local people. And so, that's about as granular as it gets. It's not rocket science. It just simply says we could let the money flow away, or we could keep it right here. We know that we have high unemployment in DeKalb County and throughout the United States. We're going to let the president and the U.S. Congress, work it out for the country, but we're going to fix it right here for ourselves at home. We're not going to wait for it to get through the Congress. We're going to fix it right here at home with our own job stimulus program, and this is how we're going to make it work. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I need the mic, but okay. That's perfectly okay. I spent about 3 years with SCORE, which stands for Service Corps Retired Executives, and the thing that we found is small companies can't get funding. So what are you putting in place so that small companies can get funding so they can partner with someone else, or for that matter, come into DeKalb County and work for DeKalb County in some way?
I've got my Economic Development Director, Charles Watley, so I'm going to let him talk about some of our funding mechanisms, because he can probably do that, and some of our affiliates who we work with, like DeKalb County Enterprise Business Company, DEBCO, and others. But again, I just want to emphasize what we encourage our local small businesses to do is to partner with some of the larger businesses to compete on the contracts. Now, obviously, they have an incentive to want to do that. But we have created the incentive for the larger companies to want to partner with the smaller companies through our ordinance that says you're going to have a better chance of getting the DeKalb County contract if you partner with one of these local small businesses that have registered with the county. And you want to specifically talk about financing?
Thank you. Good evening. Again, I'm Charles Watley, Director of the Office of Economic Development. And we've got a couple of programs that we're looking into. We formed a partnership with ACE, which is Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs. They're originally based in Cleveland, Georgia, but they're setting up an office in downtown Decatur. It should be built out in a few weeks. And they're doing two things. They've got a program where they're lending up to $50,000 to small businesses, and then they're applying for a loan program that'll be funded at about $2 million that will be only for DeKalb County businesses. So this is a company I sit on the advisory board for. They have a stellar track record. They do a lot of the technical service support. Technical assistance is a critical component for many small businesses as well. The second is we had our economic development retreat with the Development Authority of DeKalb County over the weekend. And we're actually going to look at funding a program that will finance entrepreneurs who have county contracts. Because that's one of the issues we face, is that a number of those entrepreneurs, construction companies, suppliers, may have some credit issues, while not major, don't meet the banking criteria. Their credit criteria is such that those companies are going to be excluded. And what we're going to say is that as long as you have a strong business, you've had a track record, we would be able to really to share some of the risk, because we feel that the county is a good payer. And so we're working on those, and we're looking at other ways to really come up with the products that sort of are between micro lending and large-scale lending, because that's really the gap right now in DeKalb County. So you'll be hearing about announcements for those programs fairly soon.
Now, I want y'all always to feel good about DeKalb County government. I just wanted you to know Charles Watley joined us a few months ago. He's one of our more recent hires. He's a Yale grad, and he came from the Atlanta Development Authority. Most of the men and women that are on the first row are not only DeKalb County senior executives, but I'm looking at the folks on the row. I mean, we've really worked hard to reshape this government and go after some of the best and the brightest. And all of these are my appointees. I mean, I want you to know that Joe Gottlieb, my CFO, thank you, Charles, became my CFO, and I introduced Wiz Miller, who had not only a 25-year career with DeKalb County Police Department, but he's a lawyer as well and was working in the Solicitor General's office. We've got Chief Eddie O'Brien and Chief Bill O'Brien, also veterans with the Police and Fire Department. people like, and I'm not going to go, name everybody, but Joe Basista came to us, heading our watershed management department after doing a national search. Mike Van Wee is running our airport department. Betty Davis, I introduced, is our one DeKalb face. And Nina Hall, if you don't know Nina Hall, if you need to get in touch with me, you need to know how to, Nina Hall is the way. And her number is 404-371. This is her home number. No, really. The number is 404-371-2881. And just ask for Nina. You know, there was a song called Call Tyrone. Just ask for Nina, and Nina can track me down. And then Ted Reinhardt, we snagged him from Indianapolis, and he is our COO of infrastructure, Kelvin Walton, administrative. And the guy on the end, I want everybody to know who Gary Cornell is, because he's been in the paper a little bit lately. But stand up, Gary. I did all this for you. I led this all up for you. I set you up. Gary Cornell is our Director of Planning and Sustainability. And he still waits confirmation by the Board of Commissioners, but he's our interim. And let me just tell you about him. He graduated from Georgia Tech with honors in architecture. He graduated from Harvard with a degree, with distinction, with a degree in planning. He's been the director in Gwinnett County. He's been in the private sector. He's taught courses at Florida State University. He is the most qualified planning director this county has ever had, okay? And so if you can't get confirmed, then none of us, and I'm including myself in that, ought to be confirmed. So I just want to tell you, this guy is top notch, okay? So I want you to know who everybody is here. Okay, who's next? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Josh Cobb, and I live in Brookhaven, about a mile down the road, and I've got several of my neighbors in the audience tonight, and I'm talking about the livable community initiative, and particularly this electronic billboard that has been erected, which I have sent you several emails, and I'm sure several other people here have as well.
I've even come out and looked at it.
Yeah, well, first of all, this thing was erected in record time on a holiday. It was erected against the wishes of the LCI. I mean, it defies common sense. And I realize you got to deal with a bunch of things like declining property values, so on and so forth. But if I tried to sell my house today with that thing on, illuminating my house, I don't know what I would lose. This has got to go. It is a boil, and it needs to be lanced. Look, this, all kidding aside, this is not good for the neighborhood. It's not good for LCI. It's not good for plans. It's not good for anything. And I'm just curious as to how this came to being.
Well, let me give you the background as best I can, and Gary may have to come supplement. But what I understand is that going back several years, there was litigation with the county, and as a result of a consent decree, the Action Outdoor Advertising, which I believe is the owner of the billboard, was allowed to put up billboards in certain locations, which the judge gave them options in where to place it. And I understand that litigation was, or that consent order was subsequently amended. And I understand that there's some litigation now to deal with that. So a lot of that's being addressed in the court. The bottom line is that there is a legal document, a consent decree, which gives them the right to have it up. Now, I don't like it, you don't like it. And I met with some of the citizens about that not too long ago, came out and viewed it myself. About a week later after I viewed it, had dinner with some friends who live in Brookhaven, and they let me know, and these are just social friends, but they also let me know that every night when they go to sleep, they see this flashing light in their bedroom. So I've called the lawyer who represents Action Outdoor Advertising. And what I've said to him is that, look, I understand that you all have this consent decree or consent order, and I understand that you have certain legal rights. But would you consider actually just sitting down and maybe negotiating some other locations for your sign? And they said they would be willing to have the conversation, and we're actually meeting this Monday. Now, I've also asked my staff to look at what some options might be, because as you can imagine, I mean, what they've asked me is is it just the location of the sign or the type of the sign that people are opposed to? And I told them it's my understanding it's both the location and the type of sign that people are opposed to. So we're going to sit down on Monday and we're going to see what kind of options we can come up with. This is all a negotiation, and it's all built upon them asking them to exercise goodwill. I'm going to have to offer them something in exchange because I'm meeting with the lawyer, and I don't know whether the lawyer is bringing their client or not. Do you know whether they're bringing the client to the meeting? I'm not sure. So I'm almost certain I'm going to have to offer them something in exchange for what they'll be giving up. I run a risk in impacting another community in doing that, but I want to have the conversation to see where we can take it. In the meantime, I understand that there's a process that's going through the courts, and we'll have to react to that.
Well, for example, they've got another sign at the corner of Peachtree Industrial and where Peachtree breaks off at the Lowe's. Okay. That doesn't impact anybody. There are ample spaces up and down Peachtree and Peachtree Industrial that probably have higher traffic volume. So I hear what you're saying, but this location is hideous.
Well,
so
you know, there's certain things that you know, when I said there's those narrow questions I may not be able to answer, but those questions I hear regularly. And as CEO, you know, you can rest assured I hear about this billboard all the time, so much so that I came out to take a look at it myself, and so much so that I called Mr. Forsling. Some of y'all may know Mark Forsling. I called him up on the phone and said, Mark, can we have a conversation about it? I used to practice law. I have some goodwill because of that with some of the lawyers in the city, and he was open to having a conversation. And because I think he's a fair guy, and he's open to having a conversation. And we've got it scheduled now. And I wish we had gotten it scheduled last Monday so I could report back to you. But I will report back to you, you know, even though it'll be after this town hall meeting.
Let me ask one last question. In the future, if something like this were to happen again, what kind of due process, or let's say, hey, by the way, there is going to be a hearing to determine whether this sign, I never got any notification. I'm sorry I'm so adamant, but that thing, I had to get blinds in my room.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
like I said, you know, I went out on a social event with some friends, and they pretty much told me the same thing. And that's the last thing you want to hear from people you know and you like. I mean, I like all y'all, but you know what I mean. I don't know. I want to make sure he hears me. This happened so many years ago that, how many years ago? Do we know when this litigation first occurred? 2008, so it preceded when I was CEO. So I really don't know what the process was and what notice went out. Okay. Yes, Larry, you have the next question.
Yes, sir, thank you. Kind of a little out of sequence here, but I did want to stand up and personally tell you how much I appreciate you standing your ground on the hiring of Mr. Cornell. As you know, I have had numerous continuing issues with planning and zoning, and I don't think you could have made a better choice, and I hope that the Board of Commissioners over time will come to appreciate the decision.
Well, let me just say I appreciate you saying that, and also I really do try to operate on principle, and it takes a while, but we've worked really hard to bring in the best talent. The reason why I introduced just a handful of people, I didn't introduce everybody up here, but I want you all to feel good about who is providing services to you in DeKalb County government. And we've really gone after the best talent. And Gary's just one example of that, but I could have picked anybody, you know, up here, and it would have been pretty much the same story.
Regardless, I appreciate that choice. I would just make one other comment, and I don't want you to answer it because it could be difficult, but underneath the One DeKalb Works, it wouldn't bother me if it said One DeKalb Works Together. I'm continuing to be concerned about the level of distrust or difference that exists between your office and the BOC office. And I know that that's another thing that has to be worked out over time, but I would like to see somebody try to mend those fences or fill in that ditch, whatever it takes.
Well, it's a deep ditch sometimes, but I like to respond to that. That's not, I mean, because that's partially maybe true, but not entirely accurate, that this idea that there's a feeling of mistrust. Let me say from my perspective, I've always tried to make sure that I represented the county and represented you in the best light. I think about that first and foremost, and I always think about the reputation of the county. So even when attacked, I'm often slow to return the attack because I'm concerned that how that can get and does get played out in the media. And I care about our schools, and I care about the county because that impacts our ability to bring business here and promote the county and economic development and have quality neighborhoods. And I think you all get it, the whole gamut. So I do care deeply about that. Now, I think checks and balances are a good thing. I think that we ought to operate, with the right motives. And, you elect individuals, and I applaud people who run for office because it's a tough thing to get people to do. And the reason that we have an election process every 4 years, or, sometimes 2, but 4 years in the case of county officials, is that we get to look at who we put in office and whether we want to make changes. I mean, that's just a part of the process. I've got to come to you and ask you to renew my contract, and commissioners have to do the same thing. But I think checks and balances overall is a good thing. In DeKalb County, sometimes you hear that we have this unique form of government. I'm not the only CEO in the state of Georgia. I'm the CEO of the largest county government in the state of Georgia, but not the only CEO of county government in the state of Georgia. There are a number of consolidated governments, and even Rockdale County has a CEO form of government. But if you go throughout the United States, about 1 in every 4 counties, maybe a little bit better than 1 in every 4 counties, has an elected executive. Sometimes it's called a CEO, sometimes it's called a county executive, sometimes it's called a mayor of the county government. But about 1 in every 4, and it's particularly popular when you have large urban counties. And what it gives us is checks and balances. You could have a commission, and the worst case of that would be a county in Alabama, which just has a group of commissioners, and each of those commissioners operates and runs the various different departments, and they've been on the brink of bankruptcy and default a number of times. And so what we have in DeKalb County is we have an executive who is elected countywide, who's charged with the day-to-day operations of the county government, and we have a board of commissioners which is charged with setting policy. My job is to present a budget to that board. That board has the responsibility then to adopt the budget. And then I have a responsibility to manage within the budget that is adopted. And so, I mean, there are some very defined responsibilities. The board has 20 enumerated tasks, and I have some broader tasks. Sometimes the lines get a little gray. The board will step outside of their role, or I think I've done a good job of staying within mine. I think I have, because if I thought I hadn't, I would do differently. I mean, I really believe that. Now, I use Gary because, Larry, you brought up Gary Cornell. And this is what I believe about the confirmation process from a principal perspective. I know it. I understand politics, and I know it can be abused. But the reason for confirmation is so that I go out and get the best talent. I don't go out and hire somebody just because they're my brother-in-law. And I don't go out and hire somebody just because, they're a political contributor. I hired somebody. I didn't know Gary Cornell before we began this process of looking for a planning director. But when he came to my attention, along with, a group of other candidates, I looked at him and truly believed that he was the best candidate for the job. And I've given you his background and credentials. And nobody has challenged that. See, not once have I heard that challenge. What I've heard is that we don't want him. We told the CEO not to bring him forward, and he did it anyway. Okay, but I still have a responsibility to bring forth the best talent to deliver services to the people of DeKalb County. And so here's what One DeKalb is about. I also believe in unity, us working together, us coming together. Almost every stance I will take as your CEO will be about a concept of One DeKalb, a spirit of unity, doing those things which embrace us as a community, as opposed to those things which divide us as a community. Because I have an overarching responsibility as CEO, and that is to represent all of the citizens of this county and to bring us together. Because when we work together, it's like a family now. I understand that we don't all like each other every day of the week. That I understand. I get it. I got siblings, okay? All right? I get it. But I also get this. We talk, I teach my kids about, I tell my kids, I have young children, I tell them, you're part of the Ellis family team. And when you leave this house, I tell them, I have a son and a daughter, and somebody says something, I tell my son, if someone says something about your sister, it doesn't matter whether you agree or not, you defend her, okay? And we all understand family. That's the way we operate. We can talk about each other, but we can't go out and let other people talk about us, okay? And when we see communities that operate that way, then those are the communities that prosper the most. There's certain counties and communities in Georgia, we tend to look up to because it's not that they agree, but there is a mutual respect, and there's a way that they treat one another without personalizing issues. And so what I want you to know is that I'm always going to be honest, and I'm going to be candid, and I'm not going to engage in personal attacks that are unwarranted. I'm not going to make false accusations about people. Sometimes, though, I have to deal with that, and I just have to deal with it. And sometimes it'll come from the other branch of government, but it doesn't mean that I'm unwilling to work with them. I still respect them as the other branch of government, and I'm going to give them the respect that they're due. But I have not only respect them, but I have an expectation that they're going to do their jobs appropriately, just as you have that same expectation of me. Okay? Yes, right here.
Hi, my name is Sonali Sandan, and I met you last week during your kickoff.
Yes, thank you for being there.
Yes, and I just kind of wanted to follow up on what we had talked about. I wanted to ask if you were aware of the recommendations that were made by the grand jury about the animal control in DeKalb County. The reason I'm asking is that I'm not affiliated with any rescue groups. I never thought of myself as a dog rescue, cat rescue person, but I've lived in Decatur now for 4 years, and about every few weeks, a cat or a dog gets dumped in my neighborhood. And I hate calling animal control because I know they're not going to make it alive from that shelter despite being healthy, adoptable pets. So because of all this has led me to sort of really research on where is my tax money going. This is something that my tax dollars should be sort of servicing. And I came across a grand jury recommendation that was made in October, and in that recommendation specifically,
several recommendations, and as a result of those recommendations, there are a number of things that we're implementing. One, we are in the process. Has it gone out to RFP yet, Kelvin? Okay, we've got an RFP out on the street now excuse me, for the outsourcing of animal services. A second thing is that we're identifying, we believe a lot of the upgrades are dependent upon funds and funding. We believe that we've identified a source of funds that we can use. It's going to require us to borrow money, which is another reason why we have to have a good, strong bond rating. But it's going to require us to borrow money for the upgrading of the center, the facility we have in place now. We're waiting on an opinion from our law department about whether we can actually do that. It's innovative, it's a little aggressive, but we understand that there's a dire need. The third thing is that we've contacted the folks who led the Animal Services Task Force, and we've asked them to help us identify a storefront facility that we might be able to use for immediately, but before getting a full upgrade, so we can have a newer and better facility for the adoption process of pets. One of the things we know is that, like we're thinking if we can get one of the pet stores or something like that that maybe have closed as a result of the economy at one of the shopping centers that is now not doing as much business as they were, then we might be able to get that at a reduced price. So we're doing a search for that now. And then the fourth thing that I can think of, and I'm going to let Director Miller speak, is that as part of the budget cuts from last year, there were 10 positions that had been eliminated. Is that fair? From the budget. In our revised budget recommendation, we are restoring those positions. Now, it'll be up to the Board of Commissioners to determine what finally happens with that budget. But that is the recommendation from the CEO's office. And Director Miller, do you want to add anything to that?
The CEO answered just about all your questions, I believe. I have more details if you like them, but I have been working with the Animal Services Task Force, as well as the Director, Kathy Mooneyham. Sergeant Metlin is back there. I visit the facility almost once a month, and I firsthand have seen all of the observations that the task force has seen. And like the CEO said, we're working very quickly to identify some vacant storefront property, say, for instance, a vacant or vacated PetSmart, that we can use as an attractive facility to put some of the more adoptable animals in. Therefore, that frees up space in the shelter. Mr. Reinhardt and I, we have a wonderful coordinated relationship. I have spoken with him about doing some property acquisition to see if we can get that property for a nominal lease. Mr. Reinhardt has also helped us clean the facility a little better. Yes, there's mold. Yes, there's a pest infestation. We've outsourced the pest control company already, so they do a better job of exterminating, and Mr. Reinhardt's group has helped us clean the facility. It needs more work, but we're working hard as we can to try to fix all the problems as quickly as we can. I'm an animal lover myself, so I hate to see the conditions that animals are in, but this didn't start overnight. We're working very hard to repair it as quickly as we can. And I see you have another question.
And I just want to answer that, and then I'll take your follow-up. A lot of this turns on dollars. Understand that the county's budget will not be formally adopted until the end of February. Tomorrow's February 1st. And so we don't know what we can do. This year, the gentleman asked about whether there was going to be a tax increase. And so we offered a very tight but prudent budget this year, anticipating even more decline in our tax digest, okay, because we don't know when we're going to bottom out, like I said. And being very frugal on how we're spending our money. And now, no tax increase this year, but some of the commissioners are saying that they want to further cut the budget anyway. Okay, we're trying to rebuild our budgetary reserve and anticipate a further decline in our revenue. So cutting the budget will only make it more difficult, including cuts to public safety. I don't know what ultimately the board is going to adopt, but some deep cuts to public safety. Now, I'm getting your emails. When I say yours, I mean I'm getting a number of emails on this issue, and we've been responding with those things that I've outlined for you. So understand that whether we're going to be able to either build a new facility or rent out some facility to do a portion of what we're doing or even outsource is going to be dependent upon what our actual budget comes in. And if we have to endure, and you asked, I'm going to be honest, there's politics being played. You know, what the board will say to me is, we're going to cut the police budget and we want you to eliminate Director Miller. Now, I can tell you, I'm not going to agree to do that. So if they cut, and the board has every right to tell me to cut police's budget, but not to say eliminate a position because they want to play politics. The board will say, we want you to get rid of one DeKalb, because that's a program set up by the CEO. I'm not saying all members of the board. I'm just saying some members of the board. Some members of the board will say, we don't want to build a soapbox derby track because the CEO talked about it in the State of the County address. Okay, so understand, if I have to endure a cut to the police budget, it's going to have to come across public safety, and that could impact our ability to do this. So it's important not only to speak out on this issue, I think, but also to speak out on the budget. Yes.
Well,
yes,
I mean, just a few comments. I know that budget's on everyone's mind, but I mean, you know, I just want, and I'm sure you know, but take note that nothing has been done to this facility since the 50s. Not a dime has been spent. And
no, that's not true. That's
very
not true.
small portion of it. I mean, unless, I mean,
but
I don't want to.
You know, I just want to correct a misstatement. That is not true. But I do understand that there is a dire need for upgrade. That I get.
Okay, fine. Secondly, I mean, I understand that you're looking for a storefront property. Just you know, my concern is that, you know, just like you wouldn't just have a building and call it a school. Okay, this is going to be a school now. PetSmart is going to be a school. You cannot just take a building and then make it into a shelter. You have to build it. You have to plan it. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Last of all, I was just unclear with the positions that were cut. You are saying that you are going to propose that all of those positions, which I believe are 8, are going to 10. Okay, fine. 10 are going to, you're going to propose that they be restored, correct? Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.